Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of IPA World. You can find more information about IPA-USA by visiting our website, and we have a conference coming up, so you really want to do that quickly at IPAUSA.org. Up in that top right-hand corner, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and be a friend on our Facebook page. And magically, every Monday, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch is our very own Lisa Murphy. Hi, Lisa.
Hello. Nice to be back. Thank you.
Yeah. Lisa is a board member and a wonderful, wonderful play advocate. And with us today on the porch is Ross Thompson. Ross is a longtime advocate for play and an avid Dungeons and Dragons player, and the co-host of the podcast Teaching with the Body and Mind, and the program and educational director to help create play-based and nature-based early learning center in the South Metro area of Minnesota. So is it humid there, Ross?
Currently, yes, it is what we call the hot season in Minnesota. It's
yeah, July and August are awful everywhere, but I know I've been in Minnesota in July and it was quite hot.
Well,
so Ross has done all these travels around the world. And so he's going to talk to us today about the universality of play with his adventures that he's been on, and we can't wait. So go ahead, Ross, tell us about where you've been and what you saw.
Well, yeah, I've had the good fortune and the privilege to be able to travel to quite a few continents and countries with my work at the University of Minnesota years ago. And in doing so, they were usually play related, or not play related, I should say, teaching and education related, which in our world is also play related. Mm-hmm. And I guess before I jump in, I also want to put out there that I'm not a cultural anthropologist. By no means am I able to speak upon, like the representation of all the cities and places within these great schools that I got to go to. I'm just going to speak specifically on, the trips that I had and what I was able to observe. So that, but by no means does that have a overall generalization or kind of representation of, the schools, the climates, the people. So with that, I think what has been interesting is I've had the chance to go to Uganda to do some teacher training at a private school there in Lira, Uganda, which is in the kind of the north central region of the country. I was able to go to South Korea and do some teacher training at the University of Education in Seoul. And I was able to go to Italy and go to actually the Reggio Emilia, one of their study tours, and get a chance to go there. And then outside of that, I was able to visit a program in Australia at the Mia program in Sydney. And so, some of those trips happened younger in my career, but also some have happened as I've grown, and even reflecting back upon them now, it's realizing how embedded play was. Mm-hmm. Either in the schools or within the community as I was kind of walking around through the towns. And it was interesting to kind of see the contrast of that. Some of the programs had this real, the schools we were going to there was a lab school in Seoul that had a more rooted play-based mission in their school, which was a contrast from what the teachers had said about some of the other programs and the really kind of strict learning methods and teaching methods that were used in some of the surrounding schools.
And when you say, can you be a little bit more specific for us, Ross? Like I have a picture in my head of what I think you were witnessing. Mm-hmm. When you say play-based, can you walk us through like some specifics?
What we were seeing at this specific lab school in South Korea was large dramatic play. There was blocks. The children were having immersed kind of in their daily schedule was this free play, was this idea that the play was the learning in addition to the lessons that they would do, because they did have other times where they were doing a little more structured sit down learning and things, but they also had a large chunk of opportunities for free play where children can get in and express their ideas and thoughts in the art area, in the block area, in the dramatic play area, but also having science stations and manipulative areas, and similar to places that we'd see, in the programs that I've been a part of. That's the areas I want to have available as well.
But they had more time.
They had more time, but they had also, they were, I believe, they had full day opportunities, so they did have a good amount of time to jump into some of these topics. And
Ross, was it all large group with children, or was it child choice of where to go?
From what I was able to observe, because they were actually, when I went over, it was also their kind of summertime program, so they had didn't have all their classes available, but it seemed that it was pretty self-selected, and that there were large groups of children playing together, like they were able to do that. But this was contrasted by my trip to Uganda, when I was doing a teacher training in Lira, and I was asked to come over to help and try to get play to become a part of their teaching curriculum or part of their teaching philosophy, because the director, the headmistress of the school said, we know there's new ways to do this, but how we've been taught is a very traditional method, and we haven't changed it for many years, because they were taught under a colonialized system and they were told not to change, and that has been the case. And so their headmistress, who has been around the world, has observed other programs and like, well, I know there's more ways we can do this. So that was my invitation to come in. And it was that was a really transformative trip to see, in contrast, my first week there of observing, where there really wasn't play in the classroom. And this is not by any means a knock on the teachers or anything like this. Again, this is just the way that they were taught when they went to school. This is how you become a teacher. And this is from their own recounts. This is their own telling of, this is all we know. And their lessons were very sit down, rote memory, back and forth. And then they'd have tea time, where they'd have a break. They'd have their lunch break. They'd have another kind of recess later on. And then the children would go out and play in the yard outside the classrooms. And the play was just explosive. There was a lot of running and chasing and dancing. And, even from sitting with the teachers and watching kind of from the porch of the classroom, there was stories being told. There were things going on, and then the children would stop and they'd come in, and then they'd have to sit down and they'd have to listen. And so as I had watched it, I said, so, tell me more about what they're learning and how you think they're learning best. And they said, well, because the children would write in the blue book, kind of college exam blue books, and they would kind of, basically the teachers would write a lesson on the chalkboard, and then they would repeat it, and the children would then start to write it and trace it down. And that was how they would tell if they were learning. And I said, okay, so that's one way to do it. But what about this? And I said, so when we had our meetings, I said, I'm going to play some games with you, and I want you to see, what do you think we're learning in this? And so in the classrooms I was in, they had flashcards that were made that went all the way around the room, which were their vocabulary words. And they had very simple drawings on them.
I think he's got in your paper.
What?
Oh, I said, well, because they were paper. These were around the classroom. They had these larger kind of flashcards that were cat, can, sun, and then they would go around, and that would be where they would draw a picture, and then the children would draw the picture, and then they would spell the word on the board, and then the children would write the word in their workbook, and then they would spell it out, and then the children would spell it out. So there's a lot of this just parroting.
Didactic, yep.
And that's where you knew the word if you could say it back, and if you could copy it on the board. And I said, okay, well, let's just try this. And so I said, I want you to think of, what am I drawing right now? And this is with just the teachers. And I drew a circle on the chalkboard, and I said, what did I make here? And they said, a circle. And I said, yeah. Okay. So tell me, what can this circle be? And they looked at it and like, it's a circle. And I said, yes. So what could this circle become? And they're still kind of thinking. And I was like, well, that's the circle. And I said, okay, so watch this. And I started to flick lines around it. And they said, oh, a sun. And I said, yes. So now what else could it be? And then they caught on to where I was going with this kind of change of the lesson. So they started to say cat and man and bin and the things that were on the cards around the room. And I said, absolutely. And I would, as they would say it, I would erase the drawing and I would add the next drawing using the drawings around the classroom. And I said, yeah, oh, great. Anybody else? And we'd gone through probably 10 or so, and they could kind of catch on. I said, okay. What if this was an eyeball to a giant fish? And I drew outside of the circle and I started to make this giant fish face. And they're like, what? And it was just this amazing, exactly. Like the way that we see that happen when the children's new acquisition of knowledge or thinking. I mean, I was seeing it in a room full of adults who were just like, I've never thought
about that
that was an option, or that was a way that we could do this. And I said, so everybody, let's go outside. I want you to find a stick or a rock, and we're going to play this game out in the dirt that's outside the classroom. Because this was a school that had limited resources. They had these college books and they had these pencils and things, but they were pretty precious materials because they were often donated by other programs that would come. So they had a limited amount. But I said, what you have an unlimited amount of is this wonderful red clay dirt that's outside the classroom, and sticks and rocks, because that's what the children were playing with out in the playground. So we went outside and I had the teachers start with a square. And I said, here, everybody draw a square in the dirt. Now, I need you to come up with at least 5 things that this can become. And one of them has to be something different than one of the cards that are in the room, because I've been paying attention. And so they did. But it was also just like the joy that was starting to happen, because I also had them work in groups of, I think, 3 or 4. And so I said, when you have something, you got to wave me over. And they were just flying through pictures, and they're like, come see, look what I made. I made this. This is the box on the back of the lorry, on the delivery truck. It's now the package. And like the shouts and the excitement that was coming from this. And I said, great. And we went back in the room. I said, how did that feel? Oh, it was so much fun. I said, imagine that for your children when you are teaching. Think of that joy. Yes. Think of that fun. Because what we know is that will increase the learning. Yeah. It'll put that learning in a different part of the brain. But now the children will be using this in their stories and their games outside, which only reinforces the learning within one another. Mm-hmm. And will help if you are the child who's not learning as quickly, these games can reinforce that. Your peers can help you learn. So it's not only happening here. And so it was just this amazing transformation. And so we got to use a little bit of that. And I knew it was going to be a big ask for a lot of the teaching. And truth be told, not all the teachers really caught on. They're like, it's not how we teach. But going back for a second trip to kind of do some follow-up, they knew I was coming and I came to visit. And one teacher specifically, I remember when I got into his classroom with he and his co-teacher, he said, oh, wait a minute. And he left the room because he was so excited. He went to the supply closet that had a kind of just really beautiful art materials that had, again, been brought and were just kind of waiting in there for this opportunity. He brought back a bag of pipe cleaners. And he said, children, what is this? And they said, it's a stick. And he said, yes, okay, now watch this. And he took this green pipe cleaner and he bent it into the letter R. And he said, children, what is this? And they all said, the letter R. And he said, yes. Who would like to make a letter R? And everybody's hands flew up. And he started to hand out these pipe cleaners. And he asked the children to try to make an R, and they did. And can you make it a different way? And the the excitement on his face, the energy in the classroom, but also then the sense of, I think, pride. I mean, I thought it looked like he was very proud of himself, of thinking, hey, wait, I can change this to make this more of that playful activity. And
I
so,
think the beauty of all of that, Ross, is that you talk to them about it, you ask them questions, but then you let them experience the joy,
right.
which is what needed to be replaced from what their experience was.
Well,
That it empowers it gives them another perspective, I guess.
yeah.
Right?
And it was a conversation that we had in that first trip of like, who here has been a child before? Of course, everybody. Who here has played before? And how did that feel when you got to play? And this is again a place that within this school, there, that was learning to school time was school time, and that was time for lessons and time for learning, and play was outside of those times. And I said, it's okay to bring those together. And just that small shift, because I said, think about the times when you learned a new game with your friends. How much fun was that? Did you want to keep playing it? Yeah, you probably played it a lot. And, talked about learning soccer and learning different kind of songs and games that they played as children. I said, bring that in. Those are the things that can change, because if your excitement is there, the excitement from the children, but also maybe watch what the children are playing. Are those things you can bring into lessons? And I said, so tomorrow, this is something I asked the teachers to do again during that trip, was that first trip. I need you to collect 10 things and then bring them in. And it might be little stones, it might be seeds, it might be something that you can find a lot of anywhere, kind of on your way to school or within your home, that cost you $0. And so they brought in all these collections of things, and I said, so do you think this is something we have the children do? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, so have them bring things, because let's think of some math games. So we came up with some counting games and some addition and takeaway to meet the things that they were working on, but changing it again from that back and forth to let's make a game out of this. And because that's the one thing that's happened in any of the trips that I've taken around the world, but within the country, and I'd love to hear kind of your own stories of where you've gone, but that anywhere you've been, anywhere that we've been, children are playing. They're finding a way to play, even in really hard situations, even in really less than desirable living conditions, that there's that drive that children try to find ways to play. And I think if we recognize that, if we just continue to reinforce it and realize, that it's not only a fun escape, or that it's a way to kind of keep yourself entertained, but it's the reinforcement of the learning that is going on.
It can be the vehicle for that learning.
Exactly.
It can be the beginning of that learning, right? Based on their experiences. So Ross, take that beautiful example of teachers who had one sort of philosophical approach, because that's the way they were taught, and you kind of gave them a different lens to look through. Now take us to Reggio Emilia or Australia next, and what was different or what was the same?
Well, the play was still universal. That was definitely there. And this, to use the Reggio example, was just that it was the choice was there. The play, the trust in play had been a part of the foundations of building these schools, when it hadn't been prior. That we know that the education system, specifically in Reggio, had changed and was created post World War II to kind of say like, it was really bad. All of that stuff before.
All of that. Yeah. Let's don't do that anymore.
Let's not do that. And how do we not do that? How do we, and they, the discussions, and of course, this is a wild, quick hot take on how Reggio was formed, but that it has to start with children. And so how do children learn? And looking at we know the capabilities of learning. We know that school was an important vehicle for learning, but that idea that emerging in discussions, listening to what they're having conversations about, to use their motivation to have play be a part of, and playful learning being embedded in these, in your pedagogy of how you're creating your educational programs, that was something that was apparent in the way that they set up the classrooms in the schools that I'd gone to in Reggio, where they were rich with materials and the children had the opportunity to dig into their own topics, that they had the time and the trust from the teachers to say, yes, this is important. And again, that's not a knock to the school I was at previously, just more of the idea, like that's where it can start, and this is where it can lead to when you really trust.
That's what I was just gonna say. It's almost like apples and oranges, really.
Exactly.
Something that had been in existence now for maybe 40 years, 50 years, and versus like, hey, so this guy's coming to teach us how to do this right now.
Right.
What would be curious, and I know Deb wants you to hop over to Australia here, but what would also be curious for me is you visiting that school in Uganda,
right,
10 years from now, and seeing just, how that momentum literally snowballs.
Right. Well, and I think that it's the hope that it could snowball, independently, but I have a feeling, and the same is true for, consultations and things that I've done here just within Minnesota and around the continental US, that it's something it's going to take a pretty heavy immersion and kind of training to really change that at a bigger level. It was great to see in the return trip that teachers were already feeling empowered and changing a little bit. And that's also something that would have to happen. That this is something that will take a decade, if not more.
Yeah.
Because it really has to be believed by the administration, by the teachers, and by the families. Because I think if we think that we're going to change this up completely, families might just say, no, that's not how we learn. So how do you take everyone on this journey together to really have this radical change? Because I think there's a lot of programs here within the Twin Cities that could use this level of
Intervention.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because again, this traditional model of I'm the teacher and you're the child, and we need to have this this kind of hierarchy that I'm the knowledge holder and you will be the knowledge receiver, and that's how we're going to go. And that's what learning is, because that's how I went to school.
Right. Piaget called that the mug jug theory. Right. I'm the adult with the jug of knowledge, and I'm going to open up your brain,
open it up,
pour in my mug. And you think, my God, are we still teaching people that that's what it should look like? Like, where's that coming from?
Well, and I go back to where it would start, right, Ross?
Mm-hmm.
Just like in Reggio Emilia, they said it starts with the children. And so if they want to change that approach and that philosophy, it needs to start with adults in those schools, giving children a different experience than their own.
Right.
So, and I keep always going back, and I drill this in my college courses. Reggio Emilia trusts children. Just like Bev Boss said, trust children.
Yeah.
And they see every child not as someone to pour all that knowledge into, but they're each capable and competent. And though if you can use those words and get people to believe that children are capable and competent, and that you need to trust them where they are in their development to be pursuing where they need to go next, right? It's an internal driven thing.
Yep. And
if we just followed that, then, oh my goodness, the changes for children would be incredible. Yeah. All right. So now you have to go to Australia, because we only have like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Australia, the program specifically that I got to visit was the Mia program, which is also kind of a rooted in Reggio based school. So it looked not dissimilar to the other programs where they had that trust. Again, they had a foundation where the shift had happened. And one key memory from the way that, I mean, they had the centers, had the areas, and they had this wonderful, I mean, a wonderful outdoor kind of space set up that also had sunshades, and there were little hat hooks outside. I believe outside one of the classrooms, maybe they were right outside by the door, because it's extremely sunny there, and they're very conscious of, you know, taking care of your skin and staying healthy. And so the children had to have their hats on. I'm trying to remember if it was a national, like a law for children, outdoor play for early childhood programs or schools, that children have to have their hats on for this skin protection. And the children said, well, what about our chooks? Then that's what they called the chickens. And they needed hats. And they said, well, I guess they do. And so again, this program, following that direction, listening to the conversations and the respect that children have for their materials and the other living things around them, they created little tiny hats for all the chickens. I think getting them on the chickens was the trickier part, and maybe getting them to wear them. But the children, but you know, I think again that when children are given that time and that opportunity to dive in, and that their words matter, their ideas matter, what can happen from that. And I think that was a really beautiful thing. And that's where I would love to see, you know, just more, again, that trust, that recognition, and that realizing that, you know, when the children are out, again, to use that example with the chickens, when they're out playing in these outdoor spaces and they see the chickens out there and they go, wait a minute, they don't have their hats on. They need hats too, you know, because the children get to play outside and they're doing this. And then they see that the chickens, they're a part of this community. I can't say this definitively, but I don't think that level of attention and detail might be happening if we're only in the classroom, only doing lessons and only sitting with this back and forth. That now when we're getting outside, this is our only time to play. So we're going to get as much in as we can. And I'm just going to, you know, that the chickens are out there. Sure. They're great. Oh, let's throw them to the corner, but we got to get back to our games because we only have 10 minutes or 15 minutes before we got to go back in and do more lessons. But when you have that play embedded in all of your aspects of your classroom,
you're able to relax into it, right? So we're seeing opportunities that perhaps we never would have seen before.
And you're relaxing into it. And because you can relax, now you can go like this and go way deeper into it because you're relaxing versus I'm scattering, I'm just running on the top, just going back and forth, and you're really staying only on the surface. And I will say that all of the programs also had challenges. All of the programs had kids who were whining. So I before going on this great study tour to Reggio, there were this like, they're amazing schools. They must never have any problems. And one of the first schools we went to, this kid was, you know, bawling in the corner because he didn't get to play with the thing that he wanted. And I was just like, okay, this makes it human. This makes it real. The teachers have the same challenges that we do. And that, again, that's another universal aspect of education and working with children, is we all have emotions. We all have these ups and downs, and that,
I think Americans are also, and I'm jumping in here, and I know you want to wrap it up, but we, I think specifically as Americans, we tend to put the other schools from the other countries on pedestals, right? Of this magic, idealistic notion that we have in our head. And of course, as we all know, even if you've just traveled for pleasure, you got something on a pedestal. When it falls off, it's going to fall off hard, right? You know, and I love how you said the humanness. When with the podcast Jeff and I did a long time ago, we interviewed some people from Australia. And that was actually one of the first things they said was, you guys got to stop thinking that because it comes from somewhere else that we don't have any issues. We have the same issues on the daily basis as you guys do. And I think that was the first time my lens got shifted, and it's like, oh, you know, it's not like because you walk into a Reggio school, like absolutely everything is 100% like magic, and it's not, but we keep it there sometimes.
Well, we're getting the Instagram curated version of some of these programs, because of course you're going to send out your best. You're not going to say, but I think maybe it'd be great if all of our schools would also kind of showed like, here's the hard day, here's when we don't have these certain things. But I think maybe the takeaway from this universal kind of advocacy for play is that the joy that I got to see in the teachers' faces in Uganda, the joy in the teachers in the faces of the teachers in Korea and in Italy and in Australia, and then even around the country here, when I've been able to do that, it's an amazing thing to see when the teachers light up, how that reflects into the children. Because in each one of the settings where I saw the teachers were having this joy, oh man, the children were going on, because the children were going to have fun regardless. It's just where in the day and where in the space were we going to get to have it. But I think if you can have it in your classroom and in your homes, this isn't just an advocacy for teachers. This is true for families and caregivers as well. That joyfulness and that playfulness, man, it's fun, and two, just think about the depth of learning that you can get into when you're relaxed and having fun.
Because we're not
from a teacher's, and from a teacher's perspective, you want to enjoy your work. And when you're trying to herd children all day long and make them do things they're not interested in, it's miserable
for everybody.
Yeah. And so if we could just shift the way people are thinking, oh, I need to teach them, instead of I need to learn what they're interested in.
Right.
And foster that, then, oh my goodness. Well, we'd have people lined up outside the door, Ross, saying, I want to work here because
I said that to Jeff the other day. And I said, I want to talk about this, but I disagree. I mean, I'm opening a can of worms right now. So just let me just blah, and we can unpack it another time. But everybody's complaining that we got this hiring crisis. Nobody's here. I think that's a bunch of malarkey. I think I think people walk into our buildings and they look around and they see all that cookie cutter craptivities on the wall. And they're like, I don't want to be here. Why would I want to be here? So I don't think it's a hiring crisis. I think the product that we're selling, I think a lot of people have wised up and they're like, nope, can't play party to this. So I'll go find somewhere else to work. But
isn't that so reassuring that people are becoming more
aware,
particular, and aware of where they're going to invest their time for the little bit of money that they make. Right. And that sort of gives me hope a little bit. And when I talk to directors who are saying, I have 6 openings, and I'll say, why?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why are people leaving? Those are the first questions I ask. Why are they leaving? Oh, well, I just don't think they're committed. So what are you asking in interviews? So we just sort of peel away to try to get them to see that maybe it's part of the way that they're hiring people or not providing an orientation because they're so desperate, right? And so, yes, that's a whole nother thing we should unpack about. Does your playful environment in the classrooms draw teachers in or make teachers run? And why is that? Oh, that would be
another dissertation topic.
As I say,
there you go.
My 4th PhD. There we go. Get on another possibility.
Get busy.
It is. Well, Ross, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. So to learn more about IPA-USA, please visit our website at IPA-USA.org. And until next time, keep on playing.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.